What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Stay Hot. I'm Bladen Kirk, joined as always by the two greatest co-hosts of all time, in Matthew Sponhour and Theo Ash. We have a massive episode prepared for you guys today. But Matt, Theo, how are you guys doing?
Fantastic as always.
I'm nervous. We got Jordan Love on deck. We got a crazy, really a sad week of sports news here. But one of those is that the Rodgers is out against the Chiefs with COVID, and Jordan Love is starting. And
that is somehow one of the more mundane.
That's one of the more mundane.
that is somehow not the most exciting thing that has happened this week. But as always, be sure to like, subscribe, leave a review, comment, all the great things you've been doing to help grow this podcast on all platforms. And if you haven't yet, make sure you follow @StayHotPod on TikTok. And as we've been mentioning, we are still doing the Ed Sheeran hat giveaway to all, well, not to all, but to our YouTube subscribers. So, make sure you subscribe to Stay Hot on YouTube, and we'll be picking winners in the coming days for those as well. Man, like Theo just mentioned, it has been a crazy week for NFL news. Henry Ruggs, which I don't think there's a whole lot to say about what Henry Ruggs did.
It's just sad, yeah.
It really is just sad, and I see people defending him, and I don't get it.
I think almost nobody is defending him. I think there's like 4 people defending him, and people just really want to highlight.
I see it every now and then, and I'm just like, how? And then
when it first happened, people were like, "Let's wait," but now, pretty much everything.
No, it's bad. Then obviously Aaron Rodgers is out, and that's interesting. Well, then there's the Odell news, which, we'll get to that. We'll get to that, sure enough. And then, Von Miller gets traded to the Rams. And I know a lot of times, these, trades these trades don't work out. It was like, oh, well, you add this player, you're not going to go necessarily win the Super Bowl. Theo, you, posted a tweet about, or you, mentioned a tweet about it. I think it was from a PFF guy.
It was, where it's never give up picks for a defensive player because you might not win the Super Bowl with him, and if you don't win the Super Bowl, now you're just out of picks.
Defensive players are Von Miller, so
and not all these picks are second and third round picks. I get not giving up 2 firsts, giving up a second and a third for Miller makes some sense to me, especially with compensation. You know what I mean? Those are the picks that you get when you give away a free agent. I can't speak, but for what the Rams are. They're all in anyway. Might as well go even more all in when it's Von Miller.
They don't draft anybody. They gave up on drafting after drafting Jared Goff.
Right. I saw Mitchell Schwartz mention this on Twitter, and I thought it was super interesting. Von Miller on turf instead of natural grass. Turf gives edge defenders extra burst, extra get off. And Von Miller's got a lot of that anyway. Now he's got the turf to give him an extra edge, and that was something that Mitchell Schwartz was just like, oh, that's unfair if he's going to be on turf all the time now. And also alongside Aaron Donald now. It's going to be ridiculous. The other crazy thing, Von Miller has a grass allergy. He's allergic to it. So now he's off the natural grass in Denver, and he doesn't have to worry about that anymore. It's terrifying.
It's like Steph Curry after he got his eyes fixed.
And he's no longer at elevation, if you want to take that into account too. So.
Yeah, right. He's not going to be in the thin air. So as soon as I heard that news, I took and I put money on the Rams winning the Super Bowl is what I did. That's what I did. Because I think they're second in the league in sacks right now. Right now. Von Miller is playing out of his mind again.
Who's first?
It was Minnesota, actually. But they were second in the league in sacks and added Von Miller, who may not be as good as he was in his prime, but he's still really damn good. So to me, it's you add that to a great offense, to a great secondary. It's oh my God, unfair. I don't know.
All I'm saying is Aaron Donald's best year was when he had Ndamukong Suh next to him. So you add another elite rusher, even if he's not getting a ton of sacks, it's still going to help the defense.
And I mean, look at what he did for Leonard Floyd. Leonard Floyd should give 75% of his paycheck to Aaron Donald. The stuff that he offers as an edge rusher and what he does for everyone else on that line is astounding. Now it's not only Leonard Floyd who they resigned, it's Leonard Floyd and Von Miller and Sebastian Joseph Day and all these guys. It's crazy. And you got this coach who's going to go down as the best of the era in Sean McVay. and he's doing so many interesting things. And it's like, Sean McVay is going to win Super Bowls. He just is. He's already been there. Now he's got the most stacked team. It's going to happen, I think. The Rams cemented themselves as the best team in the league in that trade. And then there's the Broncos. And it's not a horrible, horrible deal for them either.
But I
think it's a great trade for them. I think people are crazy about this. What do we like? He had half a year left on his contract. They got a second and a third. He's 31 and injury prone. That's an amazing deal.
Actually,
if this wasn't enough, what was? That's my question. Like a first? I can't imagine it. I know Von Miller is great, but a first for a 31-year-old is nuts.
Yeah.
So
the only argument you can make against it is you could maybe say they're still in the playoff race here at 4-4. You can definitely make a little bit of a push, and when the ownership is like, yeah, we're sellers at the deadline here. Maybe they're like kind of punting when they could have made a push for the playoff, but they weren't winning the Super Bowl, and that's the whole point. They don't have a quarterback. They don't have a quarterback they like on the roster, so they got ammunition for the quarterback with an old guy whose contract is about to expire. So I agree, Matt. It wasn't a bad deal for them at all.
Yeah, they're definitely going to have draft picks to, even if they don't have their guy now, they can go up and get their guy if they need to.
Right.
If they like one of the guys in this class, that is. But, the college football playoff rankings came out today. And Theo, I know you want to talk about the Packers and Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love.
I don't have that much to say about Jordan Love besides hopefully. So
I was about to say,
hopefully he's good.
You tweeted out sometimes you see this, if you live long enough, you see the same eyes.
I'll say it really quick. I'll touch on this really, really quick, and then Jordan Love in the was hilarious to watch. And the reason I said sometimes you see the same eyes in different people with a picture of him and Brett Favre is that's literally what he was playing as. He was throwing it up into triple coverage. He threw some of the dumbest picks, but he also had some really, really impressive throws in the preseason. So I'm excited to see. It kind of sounds like Mahomes this year, honestly. So what a matchup between two guys who just do not give a shit when it comes to throwing into tight coverage.
Oh man! But
that's all I'll say.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it should be fun to watch. But the college football playoff rankings came out, and Matt, do you just want to take this?
They're not going to let in my team. They're not letting in Cincinnati. They won't be doing it. It won't get good enough ratings. Sorry, they don't care. Too bad. And people, it's like, oh, it's a long season. This year isn't like most years. This year isn't you lose and all of a sudden you're going to be, way dropped in the rankings. They'll rank teams how they want. I was talking to Theo and Blaine. I said it on my TikTok. I'll say it here again. If Oregon was undefeated right now, they'd be the number 2 team. But they lost to unranked Stanford. So instead they're the number 4 team. Losing to an unranked team and dropping 2 spots is unheard of. Or look at Alabama. They lost a game. They're number 2 still. They might not even be number 1 if they had won that game. That game might not have hurt them at all. And for Cincinnati and Wake Forest, the most important parts of their resume is that they haven't lost. But that doesn't matter if they don't punish teams for losing. So they have no shot. And I'll tell you this. If Alabama wins out in the regular season, they get to Georgia, and they lose that SEC championship game in a close one, no guarantee they're not in the playoffs. 2-loss Alabama has as good a shot as they've ever had, at least as far as getting in 2-loss.
Yeah.
It's really funny the way they've kind of manipulated these rankings to make it so it's consistent. I was shocked to see Minnesota there. I'm like, they lost to Bowling. I've totally wrote them off. I'm like, what has Minnesota done? They lost to Bowling Green. I'm like, man, it's PJ Fleck's not as good as everyone thought. It's over for that. They weren't even on my radar, and then they pop up as a top 20 team. It's like, what did they do? Oh, they lost to Ohio State. So Ohio State kind of needs a ranked win. That's what they did.
Yeah. Same thing with Texas A&M.
You'll notice 14. How Cincinnati, where did their ranked games go? No more ranked games for you.
They do have Notre Dame still. They gave Notre Dame top 10.
I mean, because if they hadn't ranked them, then it's like, what the hell are we supposed to do? But I'm disappointed by the rankings, and I'm disappointed. I think this all stems from the difference between in 2014 when the playoffs first started and in 2021, the playoffs now, is that it has gone from the most deserving teams to the best teams, and it's supposed to be the most deserving teams. And they'll try to convince you that it should be the best teams. No, it should not.
It's not how playoffs work.
The point of the 4-team playoffs from a fan perspective was that in the BCS, sometimes you would have a third team that would have a season that was deserving to compete for the national title at the end of the year, and they wouldn't do it. And now all of a sudden, so the solution was, okay, we'll have 4 teams. And that might sometimes let in an extra team. In fact, it almost always does let in an extra team, as we've seen, that doesn't really deserve to be competing for the national title. But letting a team compete that doesn't deserve it is better than not letting a team that does deserve it compete, if that makes sense. But now we've seen it switch from, listen, we don't care about putting in the teams that deserve a shot at it. We care about putting in the best 4 teams because that gets better ratings. And it should be the best 4 teams, but no. Like a 2-loss Alabama probably gets in over Cincinnati, but they don't deserve it because they have if you lost to Georgia, you're not the national champion. You've got the game, go win that game if you want to be champion. And people don't want it to be hard to make the playoffs. Now it's less about winning the national title and it's more about making the playoffs and all this bullshit. So I'm very upset about it. I think it's less interesting. I think the playoffs get expanded and it makes the regular season more boring.
The regular season already sucks. If you can lose to if you can lose to an unranked team and it not affect anything, then does the regular season matter?
It does, because it totally matters, because if Alabama lost 2 games, they couldn't do it. They can lose 1 game, but you're like, the regular season now doesn't matter at all. That's wrong, because if they were 0-6, they wouldn't be in the playoffs, right? If they were 0 whatever.
But they're not going to be 0-6.
It matters less, but to say it doesn't matter is wrong.
Missouri and Southern Mississippi. Of course they're not going to be 0-6.
And what kills me about it is these people will be like, well, it just sucks that you can lose 1 game and your season's over. What do you think the playoffs are? That's what you want more of. You've already got a full season of it. If you just don't touch anything, just don't change it. And there's a million ways to fix this. And really the problem stems from the committee changing the criteria and being unfair. But it frustrates me that nobody looks at it as maybe the committee should just be better. And rather it's well, if we make the playoffs so big, the committee can only mess up so bad. Right? That's the solution. It is. Right? I mean, if we let in 12 teams, then basically you have to lose 3 games in the SEC not to make it. So if you don't make it, it's kind of on you. Although it's already, if you don't make it, it's kind of on you for all Power 5 teams. Win your games if you want to compete for the national title.
Yeah.
But yeah, and part of it is you got to look at it from a business perspective. Look at it, follow the money, right? Why is Ohio State ranked above Cincinnati when Cincinnati has a higher quality win with a top 10 team
Cincinnati
and also
should be
no
ranked
losses?
above Oregon.
Yeah, but why is Ohio State ranked above Cincinnati? What is the biggest brand in college football?
Because life's not fair.
The biggest brand in football is Ohio State. They're going to give Ohio State the benefit of the doubt. They're just going to. They're going to be like, okay, if we put in Cincinnati, we've run our projections. We are going to lose $10 million. It could be more. We are going to give up on 15 to 20
they
million.
Would be far more righteous for putting us
They would be more righteous.
What really matters?
But that is not what matters. I'm in a marketing class here at ASU. And basically, it is not what is the most righteous thing we can do. I've talked to the Suns. I've talked to the Diamondbacks. They're like, we don't really care if we win or not. We just want to give away this bobblehead so people will show up to the game. That's what the teams do. That's what they're a business. They are a business. Everything is a business.
And for people that are actually fans of the game, that sucks.
I mean, it's always
really
been
sucks
this way.
For Cincinnati fans,
but it's especially sucks for Cincinnati.
That's my
if you're an Ohio State fan, you're like, okay, awesome.
No, because we talked about this earlier. Here's the bullshit. I'm an Ohio State fan. I was raised an OSU fan, then I went to Cincinnati. And now all of a sudden they've decided to change the criteria so where you can blow a game and it's no big deal. Where was this when we lost to Iowa or Purdue? Do you know how many seasons I had to watch Urban Meyer blow a stupid game to a team that Ohio State should have beaten and have it kill their season? And now all of a sudden that doesn't happen. The second I'm like, I need it to start happening for Cincinnati. Yep. It's insane.
The game was rigged from the start.
It was. And It's tough. It's
It's
not
your last
fair.
delivery, kid.
That was a great video.
It was. I was proud of it. But yeah, it is weird. My 4 right now would probably be like the 4 most deserving teams are probably Georgia, Cincinnati, Oklahoma, and
Whoever wins the Big Ten.
and Michigan
USC
State.
because it would make us the most money or something. I don't know.
Michigan State,
USC.
Cincinnati, Michigan State, Cincinnati, Georgia, Oklahoma. Right? Those are the undefeateds.
Wake Forest, man.
You can make yeah, I don't know. I think for Cincinnati to get in legitimately, you either need like Bama to lose to Auburn or something, because I think 2-loss Bama really might get in over Cincinnati.
2 losses, assuming the losses to Georgia. Although if they beat
If
Georgia,
a 2-loss, it depends on how it happens. There's a lot of questions, a lot of what other teams do. I think you need Oregon to get upset. Big Ten doesn't really matter. Everyone's going to freak out about those rankings. They're letting in one Big Ten team almost certainly. I feel like at this point, unless something really
They
weird
all
happens.
play each other. They're going to beat each other.
And then
Oklahoma needs to lose 2 or something.
I don't really know what they would do with that. A 1-loss Oklahoma team, if they're
I mean,
already
they're
ranked
undefeated
below
right
us.
now, and they're ranked 8th. So Oklahoma may not even be.
So we need a few things.
don't
Not
play
impossible, but they will do everything in their power. Like if tiebreaker comes down versus, like you said, OSU or Bama, we know how that goes.
Yeah.
But man, it would be fun to see Cincy. Now, we do have a special surprise for a lot of you. Well, if you follow us on Twitter, you already know that we have a special guest, and his name is Jordan Palmer. And honestly, I think it's just time we introduce. Now, I think it is an understatement to say that we are beyond thrilled to bring on our first guest, and his resume is outstanding. Former NFL quarterback, one of the best quarterback coaches in the game, an amazing company with QB Summit, worked with some of, some quarterbacks that you may have heard of, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, just a few names off the top of my head. He doesn't listen to the noise so much. This guy knows his stuff. And honestly, we're just pumped to get his perspective. Welcome, Jordan Palmer, to Stay Hot. How are you, man?
Stay hot. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the kind words. Powerful.
And we're just excited to have you here. Love your stuff on TikTok. I didn't even know you were on TikTok, and then I'm like, wait a second.
I didn't know what TikTok was 5 weeks ago. I didn't have it on my phone.
I was like, he looks familiar.
It's a lucrative platform.
It is. It's an easy way to get out there.
Yeah. But no, I appreciate it. And I think, we were talking a little bit before we got on of what everybody does here. And it's like, I like being in a place where there's not a lot of people and there's a lot of, new people joining that conversation every day. And so the more I heard about TikTok and realized I knew nothing about it, and the more smart people brought it up, I was like, well, wait a second, let's kind of put some stuff on there. And so I'm not talking a whole lot different than I would if I was either with my buddies with the quarterback or in a meeting room, but it's been now it's become a fun thing. Like I really enjoy shooting content and putting it together every week and thinking through new ideas. So yeah, it's been fun.
Do you record and edit all of your stuff on your own?
No, I work with a great company, Boys at Grit. So we've got an awesome process where I've got a shooter, and so I've been doing this for 6 weeks, I think, from idea to 6 weeks ago. So couldn't tell you what it's going to look like in a month or two. But what we've been doing is a shooter. They've got a team of editors. They speak fluent TikTok, so we have a call sheet and run through it. So we look up the concepts. They mine a lot of those. There's a team of, that pulls all these clips together, comes up with these concepts. Got a kid who's taken a gap year, so to speak. He's redshirting, a quarterback who's leaving Columbia, and he's going to, enter the transfer portal, and he's going to come out of nowhere and start somewhere at a big school next year. And so even pulling the clips and finding it, and, I'll sit here and I'll watch a game or I'll see something and I'll say, ooh, that's the drive of the week right there. And then he'll have it organized where we can be really efficient. So built a really cool, efficient deal, but also moving into an office pretty soon that's going to have a golf simulator that we can shoot content in, and a gym where I can shoot content, and an interview place too. So this off season will get really interesting what I end up putting on TikTok, because it's going to be less breaking down the game and more talking to the dudes who play it. So we'll see where this goes.
Right. That's the fun thing about being a content creator, where it's like, oh yeah, we need that golf simulator for work. We can make stuff with that. We need that gym for work. We really need those things.
Full swing.
It is. It really is awesome.
So yeah, no, it's been super fun, and to learn it now, I'm like on there and seeing what other people are doing and what you guys are doing. So yeah, it's been cool.
Well, I mean, we're halfway through the season at this point, and I guess quarterbacks have kind of started to show their true colors, so to speak. And, you know, each of us kind of has a guy that we've had to take on at some point, or just, you know, in my sake, I'm a fan, so I'm just trying to like retain some sanity at this point. We're just going to kind of gauge your take on some of these guys. So Theo, I think you might want to go first. You've received quite a bit of heat all year long.
Yeah, I don't know, Jordan, if you know the lore, but going into the season, I was not high on Joe Burrow on account of his arm strength. That was one thing that I thought was a pretty big weakness for him. The Bengals were not hitting anything down the field. And this offseason, I thought with his knee injury, he'd be rehabbing that. Maybe he couldn't work on the arm strength so much. So going into this season, I thought I called him Alex Smith, or more of a game manager kind of guy than a dynamic downfield threat. And then you worked with him this offseason, and you got to really dive into the mechanics of his game. And I read that Athletic article that they wrote about you and all the stuff that you guys were measuring. And I thought that was super impressive. And I read it this offseason, but I wasn't even then sure if I believed like the improvement in velocity was like, okay, when the game started, is it really going to matter? And then he comes out this year and hits more deep passes than anyone has so far this season. So I'm super interested in learning about that whole process and what your take on it was going into what your take on his arm strength was going into it, what the problem was, and how you were able to fix it or improve it.
To be honest with you, you sound like a guy who was wrong, but I don't know how wrong you were. Alex Smith was the number one pick in the draft. Alex Smith played 16 years. Alex Smith's one of my all-time favorite quarterbacks. Because he's third all-time in yards or touchdowns, but he's never been the reason they lost. Alex Smith played for 7 coordinators in 7 years. And so, and then when it got really right for him and he was really in a good situation with Andy Reid, they went 12-4. And then they draft Patrick Mahomes the next year. And so, like that year that Patrick sat, he was 12-4. He was like second in the league in a lot of things. It was like that was the first time he's like in a great situation. And so he's also way more athletic than you think and has probably average arm strength and is super smart.
It brings me so much joy to hear you say
I don't know how wrong you were, right? And then if you read an article and it says the guy's arm got stronger. So yeah, I don't know how off you were. And then, reading an article about a guy's arm strength and then just going, all right, well, they got, Bruce Feldman says it, so maybe his arm strength. No, it's not a normal thing for somebody to if you get 4 or 5 miles an hour, and you only threw it 50, that's 20%. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a big jump. And so, and if my math's correct, and so like that is a lot less to do with arm. And again, with your knee, is he going to be focused on that? So I don't know how wrong you were, but basically when you go through knee rehab, of course you address the knee, but what you also do is you strengthen the hips, the joints, the obliques, parts of your low back and glutes that you don't normally strengthen, right?
Right.
Because you don't normally address that. And so just to talk mechanics for a second, we can have a little mechanics conversation. Whoever you guys want to talk about, we can talk a little mechanics. But really, really simply, what you need to do when you throw the football is you have to create stability below your waist so that you can create mobility in your trunk. The pelvis and the trunk separating, the upper body and the lower body disassociating, separating. Okay. So to do that, you've got to create stability. You've got to create strength. And it's not bench press strength. It's not jump 40 inches strength. It's don't move strength. It's, you know what I mean? Like rotate my hips and nothing stops them from rotating type strength. And that's the stability you need. So when you rehab a knee, the way that Joe Burrow rehabbed his knee, which is essentially all in, no cheat meals, no shaving 15 minutes off the end of this. There's no corner cut whatsoever, 24/7. When you approach it that way and you get more stability than you've ever had, it creates an opportunity to create more mobility than you've ever had. And the two of those things together can get you 5 miles an hour on your fastball. And so it was a very unique window with a very unique guy to do this with, because they're not all 24/7 with it like Joey B. Yeah. They're not all like other guys could have played till 43 if they treated themselves the way Tom Brady does.
Right.
But they didn't. So, Joe was, it was a unique time for him. The game and figuring it out and X's and O's and where to go with the ball and big moment, down 6 and all. He's always at that. Always at that.
I thought it was amazing, his pocket presence in the Ravens game. There were so many plays. If you go back and watch that, like his sense of like where guys were and moving around them. Like I always thought he was good, like accuracy wise. It was just like, can he take that next step into someone who can hit things all over the field? And then this year he's been just that. And how much do you think, Jamar Chase also incredible. It's incredible, what a really good wide receiver can do for you as well. So just a combination of things that's really been quintessential for the Bengals this year.
So if you think about because we've had a couple good rookie wideouts recently, but there was like 20 years of it was like, don't take a receiver in the first round because the first round picks never pan out.
Yeah.
It takes them a couple years and all that. Right. And so, and it's still like Jerry Jeudy, what have these guys, some of these guys take a minute. Right. And so if you look at like, what does the top pick receiver need to do to play well right away? He's got to learn the offense. Okay. Well, let me say this. To be drafted into the NFL at wide receiver and play, it's like pick up where you left off type of play. You have to be playing full speed, right? Sounds dumb, right? You got to be, if you ran 4.3, you got to be 4.3 in the games. Well, here's the fastest way to not be 4.3 is to not be 100% sure where you're going. So what happens is receivers get drafted, they come to the NFL and they have to learn an entire system. They have to learn how to play with this quarterback, how he wants it, the angle. It doesn't really matter how you did it at Alabama last year. This is how we do it here. So like, you got to learn how that quarterback wants it. Not all 14-yard curls are alike. Not all bang eights are alike. Okay. And then third, you got to get used to like the playing in the NFL and the week of practice and all the stuff, right? So look at Jamar Chase. He didn't play last year. People keep forgetting that. They don't talk about like he opted out last year. So he's just been kicking it with NFL. So and he played at LSU. He's got a really good feel for that week, the NFL, what it's like, what it takes, all that stuff, let alone came in healthy. 2, he's already played with Joe Burrow, right? And 3, they made this offense. Joe's ability to teach him this offense. So what's happened is Jamar has gotten to be able to come into the league and play full speed.
Yeah, and that's
Other
incredible.
Guys, takes a year or 2.
That's incredible because one thing that I was a little bit lower on Chase as well because of that year off. And I'm like, man, that's a long time to go without, live action. Is he going to come in and be, full speed right away? Because you do need to be that right away. And you take a gap year, my thought process was no live action in a year. He's going to come in maybe a half a step slower than some other guys. But it's
the broadcast
the complete opposite.
Recording podcasts who do gap years, but yeah.
It's the complete
honestly,
opposite.
I think that showed itself in the preseason. That rust
100%.
Where he had all those drops, and I think that kind of showed itself. It was like, okay, you haven't played a football game in 17 months. That's bound to happen.
Yeah,
which is why Joe said what he said. Told everybody, like, hey, chill out. We're fine. Like, wait till Sunday. Like, you know what I mean? Not like, well, I'll talk to him about it. We'll get to the bottom of it. We'll solve for that problem. No, just like, hey, everybody, shut up. Like, just wait till the season starts. Watch this. That's why Joe said that, because that's what he believed. Like, just know what you're talking about. Just fucking dropping balls. Who cares? Wait till Sunday.
Are you concerned about him on the Bengals at all? I know that you and your brother Carson have had a long history with the Bengals, and I know Carson has had his problems with the ownership there and called them like a mess, a disaster, not really trying to win. You've been with and around that organization a long time. Do you think it's gotten better or overblown, or how do you feel about him in Cincinnati? Do you think the leadership or the culture there has changed at all?
I think Joe's a transformative player who can shift. He's proven that, right? He took LSU. They weren't even in the conversation for coming close to even making a run. You know what I mean? It's like that. And then 2 years later, the coach is fired, right? That shows you right there, like completely said, here's how we're going to do. Here's how this season's going to go. I think he's that type of player. I think my brother's that type of player too, but I do think times have changed. We were there with a different staff. Marvin Lewis was there. It's not just the owner, Mike Brown, it's his family. I don't know who else making more decisions, but it seems like they're making good decisions. They're drafting better. I've got my concerns about the Bengals. I've got my concerns about every single team. You know what I mean? These are companies. Like, I've got my concern about Apple and Facebook. I've got concerns about all of them. But I look at it and I go, can they build around this player who can transform it? Can they help him transform it faster? Right? Not that anybody's doing anything on their own, but I think they've done that. And their defense is playing well. They've got a good tight end. They've got 3 good receivers and can lose one next year. You know what I mean? And keep developing, right? And so I think Zach Taylor is a great, fit with Joe. And I know Joe loves Ohio and loves the Bengals and loves all that. So I think it's a great fit, man.
Sweet. We're talking about a lot of Ohio guys here. I know Bladen wants to talk about Mayfield.
Speaking of guys that are potentially in horrible organizations, Baker and Odell, and really that whole situation has been kind of a mess. And, I know a lot of the question is, is it Baker's fault? Is it Odell's fault? Is it Stefanski's fault? My biggest question is, how much does it play into the role? Because obviously you've played in the NFL before. Did you ever have a situation in where there was a receiver where it just never quite clicked? Right. I know you posted a video about how, different receivers obviously run routes differently. Right. And I've even I played flag football here at Miami, just intramural, and literally the guys that would come in and throw, they're like, you and Brandon run this dig route totally differently. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm 6'1" and he's 5'8". It's obviously we're going to run the route differently. So do you think that, there is just sometimes that quarterbacks and receivers just never quite get on the same page? Is that a problem sometimes? Yeah,
I think I think that's common. I don't think that's what's going on here with Baker and Odell. It's really easy to get on the same page. I will say this. I played with T.O. the last year he ever played, and he had 1,200 yards receiving and I think 10-plus touchdowns in Cincinnati. He personally had a great year. We were 12-4 the year before. We added him. We went 4-12. So I will just say, he is a Hall of Famer, obviously, as at the end of his career, he played at this high level forever. But that was a player who was going to run it this way and wanted the quarterback to adjust. And that was a new concept to me. And I'm boys with T.O. This isn't an indictment on him. But and I can understand why it would be that way at the end. But it adds a layer to trying to get first downs. It creates work. I think when you look at Baker, and I also played with Ocho for 4 years, and Ocho, I mean, if you were to say, name one player that is when Odell was Odell, the one-handed catch and the bleached hair and is a giant, at the biggest, right? The only difference between the personality that he was and Ocho in his prime was the lack of social media. Chad would have been that big. You know what I mean? And he was in Cincinnati, not in New York. If Chad would have been Chad on the Jets or the Giants, he would have been the face of football. You know what I mean? This dude was 24/7 entertainment. Chad was harmless. He would talk more shit than anybody, and it was usually just being funny. And he loved to practice. He loved to run routes. He had run scout team, can't get him off the field, all that. Loved to compete, loved football. There's a list of deficiencies and things he wasn't great at. They all have those. Everybody, you know what I mean? Hall of Fame quarterbacks have those. But what I would say is, like, it was just never, there was issues, you know what I mean? Because there are issues, but like that type of diva, and I'd say Jeff was a diva in front of his face, like that type of diva was just harmless. It was like, there wasn't the negative side of it, like, was not that big a deal. I'll say this. So picture this. You guys are college students. Draw a Venn diagram. 2 circles, okay? Overlapping. One circle is, and this is the quarterback's job on game day, okay? One circle is he personally has to play very well and win. Find a way to win, okay? That should be the only thing NFL quarterbacks do on Sundays. For some players, there's 2 Venn diagrams. There's 2 circles. There's play really, really well and win, and keep so-and-so happy. Like get him his catches or his touches, because it's not always the receiver, okay? I can go down a list of running backs and tight ends, and he says the same thing, right? So when the quarterback has those 2 jobs, the amount of times that both those circles will be filled in, right? We're like right in the middle, and right in the middle is like, we win 35-10, and he has 11 catches for 132 yards and 2 touchdowns. The amount of times that happens is not very often.
Right.
Right? And if it happens for a season like it did for Stephon Diggs last year, how many touchdowns does Stephon Diggs have through 8 games this year?
Probably got to be a 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Like 1 or 2, right? Or 3, maybe. Last year, he was on a different pace. So when you have, like, Josh Allen doesn't have 2 circles, because Stephon Diggs is totally fine with winning. You know what I mean? And would love to go off and dance and celebrate but he's totally fine with Emmanuel Sanders going off today and winning. So Baker and Odell, my thing is, Odell is a circle that has to be filled in. Now, he has been very patient, but at some point that window closes in his mind. And I guess when his dad put the videos out, like, that was the close of the window. So like, I need my circle filled. Make sense?
Yeah, I think that a lot of it also is Josh Allen is better at filling the winning and playing well circle than Baker Mayfield is.
We're not going to talk about that, Matt. We're not here. We're not here to rip on Baker Mayfield.
Yeah. I mean, data. Here's what I'll say: data would support that statement.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it's Odell, but some of the throws that Baker makes to Odell that are open are being missed, and that's not really, I think, Odell trying to create something that isn't there. It's him missing something that is.
100%.
Yeah, that does happen a fair amount of times. I won't deny it. It happened relatively recently. Would have had a wide open touchdown. Instead, it was a
Baker. My take on Baker is the progression since the rookie year has not totally been there. I still notice him double clutching. Like sometimes, like the throw needs to get ripped in there right now, and there's kind of a double clutch. It happened against what team was it? The game before he got hurt, against the Cardinals. There were multiple times where I thought, okay, this ball needs to get out right now, and there's kind of a double clutch there. Sometimes the footwork is a little bit bad. So that's my thing. I think with Baker, that's plus on top of that, he's a little bit undersized, and I know he tested like kind of as a below average athlete. I think that's kind of where it is with Baker, is like Josh Allen is just a physical freak. And I know he worked with you, Jordan, to improve the accuracy and the mechanics a little bit. So I wonder if Baker can benefit a little bit from something, I don't know, something with the footwork. Like on that pick he threw against Arizona, his back foot was kind of facing the wrong way, and he threw it to where his back foot was facing.
I don't have a picture at my head. I think I never really saw Baker throw into tight windows with a bunch of people around him at Oklahoma. Offense is designed to prohibit that from happening. Neither did Kyler, neither will Caleb. Because the way they get it out, because the way they move the pocket. Not to say that doesn't happen every now and then, but did you guys watch Michigan State last week?
I saw a good portion of it.
Okay. So Michigan's quarterback, Cade, is going to be a star in the NFL for a long time. Been with him since 6th grade. One of the storylines in that game was how well Cade threw for 385. And, the highlight, the Sports Center will tell you that he threw a pick at the end of the game, but there's more to the story. But that's his second turnover-worthy play, and like even go back to last year. But what I'll say is like the story of the game was I think he was like had like 6 in a row, third or fourth down conversions that were like 3rd and 6, 3rd and 8, 4th and 5, right? And he was like 7 for 8 or something like that. You know what I mean? And they were collapsing pockets, trusting it, fitting into a tight window with the DB getting his hand up. Okay. So like, and he's a sophomore and all that. But what I'll say is like, you either are very, very consistently comfortable at making that attempt, and then you also have the mechanics and the accuracy to back it up, or you don't have a lot of reps at that. And my point with this story is you will get a lot of reps at that in the NFL. I don't care what system you're in. And so if you enter into the league where that's not part of your game, sitting in a collapsing pocket, throwing into a tight window with a ton of risk everywhere, if that's not the foundation of your game, you don't have a lot of experience doing that, then you need to have some physical traits that are going to help you offset that lack of experience when you get into the league. Because Josh Allen didn't either, but he has incredibly unique physical traits that set him, that then with development of his mechanics and great coaching and great system, then you get this. Then you get Josh Allen right now, right? Best player in the world, in my opinion. So, like that. So I don't know, but Baker also doesn't have those physical attributes to offset that. And so you go, well, every time the pocket collapses and it's a tight window throw, you know, that's where some of those ones are being missed and where people draw the attention to. And it's not something you can't get better at. It's just something he hasn't gotten a lot better at. And I fine if this clips out, you know what I mean? And me saying that, it's a hard thing to get really, really good at. I'm seeing some guys like, I saw Davis Mills do it versus Carolina in his first start on Thursday night. I go, okay, cool. He's got that in him. Collapse in pocket, people around him. That's a big time throw for a rookie in his first start. You know, like, well, that's because he's got it in him. You know?
And I think you talk about like windows in the NFL, like Oklahoma had the moving pockets. I wonder if like the NFL equivalent of that is Stefanski's kind of play action, so heavy into play action type of offense that they run. I wonder if that was kind of boosting them a little bit, because that's something that kind of designs a lot of open looks.
I remember when the Rams were trading Jared Goff, Sean McVay came out and said that he kind of feels bad that he could have done a little bit more for Jared Goff's progression. And by that, he mostly means that instead of fixing Jared Goff's issues, he just mitigated them. He just said, we're just not going to do this. You're bad at this. We're going to avoid this at all costs. And then eventually NFL defenses forced him to do stuff that he didn't like, and they paid for it. And I think that's going to end up, that's what I'm afraid of with Baker, is that Stefanski's just saying, okay, you're not good under pressure, right? So we're just going to mitigate that entirely. We're just going to run play action all game. You're going to do quick throws, no reads, and then eventually teams are going to give him hell for it.
So what you just described is protecting the quarterback with play calling, right? So we see this when a freshman comes in the game. We see this when a backup comes in the game. We see it when a rookie, his whole rookie year. And there's other situations too, or somebody's injured, you know? So when you protect a quarterback with play calling, there are times when that's appropriate, right? I just named a few. Somebody wanting $162 million fully guaranteed with the no trade clause. You can't protect Dak Prescott with play calling. You pay him too much. You can't do that with Josh Allen. So you can't, those two things don't exist in the same place. And so I don't know if they're protecting him with play calling. I think that's a sound assessment of Sean McVay, interpretation of Sean McVay's comment. Don't know either of them to be fact. But if that is the case, that they're trying to, every offensive coordinator is going to build around what their quarterback's good at and try and remove what they're not good at. Like that is what they should do. But if that is the case, I would say that that's probably why.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of a fear of mine, right? The Browns are kind of in a lose-lose spot where it's like if they pay Baker and it doesn't work out, then we're kind of stuck back at square one. But if we don't pay Baker, then we're kind of stuck back at square one because we don't have
like pay him the right amount.
It's like, what's the better option?
That being Washington football team and Kirk Cousins relationship, where you sit here and go, Baker goes, tough couple of years, made a ton of money, and they go, we just paid a ton of money, and we got to figure out who our quarterback is.
Going back to what you were
2026,
Going back to what you were saying about quarterbacks who kind of have that it factor and can handle and make the throws under pressure. One guy who you're high on and one guy who I've been watching a lot this year is a Cincinnati Bearcat, or former Cincinnati Bearcat, I guess, is Desmond Ridder. He struck me as a guy who has a strong ability to do that type of stuff. And I just want to know what you thought about what he needs to do to get better and make it in the NFL, because I don't know if he's quite all there yet. And maybe what situation you think would be best for him in the NFL.
Yeah, so spot on. I am very high on him. I've been so for a few years. I mean, he entered this season, I think 30-4, something like that. So for those who've been paying attention, they're not super caught off guard. They've heard the name. And he's been playing college football at one of the highest levels. There's high level as anybody's been playing in terms of for the last couple of years. You can make the argument that some guys are doing more this year or through the first 3 games or whatever. But I mean, his body of work is unique. He's going to end up being I think he'll end up being the second or third most winningest quarterback in college football, like amount of wins,
Yeah, I saw that.
Like if you just look at it, right? Like they're not going to lose 4 games this year, right? They're going to lose 0 or 1 probably, right? If he loses 1 game this year, I think he moves to second all time in wins. So it's like, that's relevant. That's a relevant data point, right? That's not like, he's got the greatest yards per attempt on third down in the red zone in college football history. Like these are relevant stats to read. This one's relevant, right? Second most wins ever. So, one, that's the foundation. This dude's a winner. And then what I've learned is that he's a worker, and he will enter draft training with me in January, having just concluded a whole year of living it the way that I think franchise NFL quarterbacks live it during the season. Not the schedule and but his approach to this offseason that we had, this past offseason, the mechanical things, building a list, focusing on specific things, the communication with his quarterback coach. He's got a great quarterback coach. Not all these guys do, but he does. Gino Guidugli. So their dialogue, Guidugli's understanding of the body, the way we've all worked together for Desmond to really develop expertise on exactly what this biomechanics and kinematic sequence is and how we turn ground force energy into rotational energy and have all that energy come out our fingertip and what can happen and breaking down. Just his approach to it has been not even NFL like NFL veteran like, which is what I do for college guys. I go, hey, look, why are we going to wait? Let's not do draft training the year before before you get drafted. Let's do it a year or 2 in advance in terms of so let me start showing you how you ought to approach this like a pro. And so Desmond is, I always talk about 2 things when evaluating somebody: confidence and maturity. Give me the list of the best players. I bet you they're super confident and super mature. Give me a list of the busts. They're 1 for 2 or 0 for 2, guaranteed. And so when I meet somebody like Desmond, who is upper echelon confidence, self-generated confidence, the right kind of confidence, and is incredibly mature, that's kind of what I look at first. And then I go, okay, so he's going to end up like 44-4 or whatever. That's, you know what I mean? Like, he's broken all these records, put all these crazy numbers up. He doesn't turn it over. He works like this. Like, that's the foundation of who this guy is. That's a pretty damn good foundation right there. Make sense?
Oh, yeah. Particularly with like the Notre Dame quote. They were going to play Notre Dame, and he's like, yeah, we're going to go in there. We're going to beat them. Road top 10 opponent. And he did.
It was even better than that. He said, are you worried about the crowd noise? And he said, it's not going to be loud very long. That's
yeah. I mean,
it's witty. That's like Burrow has all these like little tiny one-liners that are subtle and it's like, so him, you know what I mean? Ridder has the same ability.
Burrow, after winning the Jaguars game, they brought a 0 blitz at him and he popped up. He won the game on the 0 blitz and yelled, you can't zero me. You can't zero me, as he was running off the field. Me. Don't zero with me. Yes.
That's his boy, Urban.
Urban?
Don't zero me.
Oh, right. Urban. Right. Urban told him Urban told him he threw like a girl. That's why he transferred. He lost the quarterback battle at Ohio State. That's right.
This is all time. Don't zero me. How about he goes to the combine as the number 1 pick and he measures his hands and he goes, I'd like to announce something along the lines like, I'd like to announce my retirement. I've just found out the size of my hands, and obviously I won't be able to play football in the NFL. It's just like on Twitter, like right at, like just beat everybody to it. Anyways, yeah, Ritter's got Ritter's. The other thing about these guys, and most of them do, but like you gotta be a dog. You be nice and polite and kind, treat people with dignity and respect and all that stuff, but you better be a dog. And so, I haven't really trained too many that aren't, and Desmond is.
That's awesome.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Are there any quarterbacks that you're like particularly fond of in this draft class? Like, I know obviously you like Ritter. Ritter's your guy, but are there any others that you're just like, man?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by Carson Strong out of Nevada. I've spent a lot of time with Carson. He's got a big time arm. That sounds cheesy, but just like whenever somebody puts together, I don't watch his highlights on YouTube, but you guys all like everyone watch Carson Strong's highlights, and you're just going to see whether it's highlights from a game or whatever. Or if you love football and you've been listening to this podcast interview this long, then just like pull up Carson Strong Nevada highlights and watch them, and you're going to see a bunch of plays. He's not as athletic as Zach Wilson. He doesn't move around like Zach, but you're going to see some like across the field, 3 dudes going in there and it fit in the window. And like, you're going to see a ton of those throws, or the post over the top where the guy literally doesn't break stride. It's perfectly thrown, or the back shoulders. You're going to see some dude throw freaking darts all over the field. Carson Strong, with one of the strongest arms in the last few years. He's also another career. Might not have ever heard of him, but he's going to end up being like breaking all the records at Nevada, all Kaepernick's records. And, he was conference player of the year. They won the conference. You know what I mean? He's like done as much as you can do at Nevada.
Right.
He's at Nevada. So most people haven't heard him, but the NFL knows who he is. I'm fascinated by him for sure.
I'm glad you talked about Carson Strong, because I just started watching my quarterbacks for the draft class, and he was the guy I started with. And it was like, outside of the speed, he's not very fast, but it's like, I see him doing before the line of scrimmage, telling people where to go, making reads, making checks before that, which you don't always see from college guys, scanning the entire field, which is something you'd always see from college guys.
He's making all these decisions out there. Yeah.
He goes deep so much, like, every couple plays, he'll just launch one, and yet still he tends to avoid interceptions. He was someone that I was super impressed with. I called him he reminded me a little bit of Goff coming out of Cal. I don't know what you think of that comparison, but Goff coming out of Cal was a first overall pick. I know it's bad now because Goff isn't that good anymore, but a little bit slow. But I thought that's who, I don't know what you think of that comp. That was what I was thinking.
That's a good comp. Yeah, that's a good comp. Matt Ryan's a good comp too.
Matt Ryan is like good Jared Goff. If you say Jared Goff, that's bad. If you say Matt Ryan, that's good, but it's kind of the same comp.
That's funny. Yeah, that's funny. So Carson Strong is really intriguing. Kenny Pickett's really intriguing to me. This will be, there isn't good or bad draft classes in my opinion. There's guys that are, in one class, there's more guys that are ready to play, and then another class, there's more developmental guys but most of these guys, I always get asked, should quarterbacks sit or should they play right away? It's like, I'd love to have them sit unless they absolutely can't, because they're just too ready. There's just like, you just don't sit Trevor Lawrence or Mac Jones. But honestly, if Mike White didn't get hurt tonight, in the game or the Jets game when Mike White got hurt, and Zach Wilson's out, like, this could have been a great thing for Zach Wilson to sit for a month and watch a veteran like Mike White play. Would have been great. Like, you can benefit from sitting and watching. We all know about Mahomes, but people forget Josh Allen was hurt 6 games his rookie year. Hurt his elbow. Got a chance to play and then sit back with context now and watch. And then come back in and play a little bit more. It's a great. I couldn't dial it up any better than that.
I've come around to that idea. I used to be like, well, what's a better experience than just playing the games? But
throw them into the fire.
People
but say, any experience is good experience. It's like, not in today's culture, cancel culture and social media and all that. No, you can melt a 19-year-old. You can melt a 22-year-old. Yeah. In Chicago, melted Mitch Trubisky. Yeah. And he's wax. So then it dried. Watch him get chiseled back together here with the in Buffalo. Gosh, with no pressure. Nobody gives a shit about Mitch. Brian Dable, maybe best offensive mind in the NFL right now, sitting in meeting. Watch him chisel himself and get back together, and then go play well somewhere next year. You know what I mean? But they melted him. And some guys are unmeltable. Some guys are like Deshaun Watson's made out of steel. So you're not melting him. And so you kick the wrong guy and you put him in a big situation and you'll melt him. So, it's why people didn't want Baker to go to a big city like the Jets, right? It was too big to get too distracted.
Yeah.
Because
Baker would have folded in New York. I can absolutely
would have been harder. It would have been harder. I don't know what would have happened, but it would have been harder. So these guys are combustible, and some are more or less, some are less and some are more combustible, but they are. And so the fit is super relevant. There's just a handful of places where we got the perfect team has the perfect decision makers with the perfect coaches, and then they're building the perfect roster to support the perfect guy for that situation. Buffalo, to a T. Kansas City, to a T. Baltimore, to a T.
Yeah.
Right? You can go in forgetting a couple others here, but there's a couple of them, those situations. And then there's a list where you go, that guy wasn't going to fit there. And everything about Baltimore fits Lamar. It's perfect. Everything about Buffalo and Josh Allen is perfect. It fits. It's the biggest city he's ever lived in. Name that. Who else could you possibly say that about? It's literally the biggest city he's ever lived in. He loves it, right? Then the offensive coordinator, the QB coach, and then you go get Stephon Diggs in the year when Josh is ready to break it. You know what I mean? Just it all fits, right? And so when you asked earlier, where do I want to see Desmond go? I want to see him go to a place where all those pieces fit.
Is there a place you think that fits right now, or do you think it's too early to tell?
It's way too early to tell. There's going to be some pieces that move. I think Deshaun Watson gets traded. I think Aaron Rodgers gets traded. I think Russell Wilson gets traded. So where do those pieces land? And Pittsburgh's the holy grail because of how they train and develop players, and because of how they draft players, and because of the stability they have in their decision makers and their coaching staff. Whatever quarterback that gets to play there for the next decade is going to go to at least a Super Bowl or 3, because the way they draft, and I know you're a Browns fan. I can see your face.
You're right.
Just so you know, your face
you're
looks
right.
dumb.
My biggest fear is they draft Matt Corral. That's my biggest fear.
Your biggest fear should be them getting Aaron Rodgers. But
is Aaron Rodgers playing for another decade though?
He'll play for another 5. Russ will play for another 5 days. You guys take different care of their bodies now. I think I'd love to see a young guy go to Pittsburgh. I think I'm a Steelers fan. It's hard to knock. They went and got Melvin Ingram and it didn't fit. Boom, traded him immediately. They just don't play around. That was the right decision to make. And they are totally fine saying we made the wrong decision in the first place.
Do you think keeping Big Ben was the right decision then?
Hindsight 2020. I mean, he's the right decision over them reaching for a quarterback or picking somebody they didn't believe in. Now we can look back and go, they should have taken, but I mean, you can do that about anybody. So I think they know what I just said, which is there's 3 guys that can win you a Super Bowl right away available next year, not including the draft. Right. So, what I think they'll do is not whiff on this quarterback decision because I think they make great decisions.
So you would say that them keeping Big Ben has more to do with them waiting for the right quarterback option to come around, because that would make more sense to me than them trying, after Big Ben struggled last year, them running it back.
What are the owners of the Steelers like? They like the same thing for a long period of time. They've had, 3 coaches in the history of the organization. Right?
Yeah.
So what they don't want to do is how many quarterbacks have the Browns had in the last 10 years?
Too many.
You know
35.
What I mean?
We've had 31 31 starting quarterbacks since 1999.
Right? Pittsburgh, what do they believe works? So what you do is you risk another tough year with the same guy and stability and all those things while you wait. I don't know if that's what they did, But if that was their strategy, it'd be hard to knock. You know, you can say, well, they should have got rid of Ben last year for Mason Rudolph, or to hand it to Dwayne Haskins, or to draft a rookie that maybe they weren't that high on those guys.
Right.
You know, maybe their department was like, look, I don't see it. So, yeah, I just think there's certain teams. I do believe that if you're going to be immobile, you got to be in the right system where they've had success developing that way. So Mac Jones going to a lot of other offenses, I don't think it would look very good. Mac Jones playing in New England, it's looking great. Looks great.
Yeah.
So Desmond is a guy who can extend the play. You have to be able to create time and space as a quarterback. Now you can do that by great pocket feel and sliding for 2 steps, or you can be super fast, right? Brady creates time and space. Big Ben, in a unique way, created time and space by hanging in there a little bit longer, but he created time and space. So it would be hard for me to see Pittsburgh, who couldn't get Trevor Lawrence and probably only really liked Mac Jones around that, say, all right, well, we need somebody who can create time and space. How do they do that? And when I advise teams, that's what I advise them to look.
So Jordan, actually, thank you so much, for taking the time to join us today. Ton of fun talking to you. I think personally, I realize, I played football in high school, but sometimes, I'm just like learning new stuff every day. I'm like, man, I really don't know as much as I think I do sometimes.
Sure, me neither.
The Dunning-Kruger Valley. It's my bio on TikTok. It's a bitch to climb out of.
Yeah, but just let people know, where they can find you on all platforms.
Yeah. Jordan Palmer on Instagram, Jordan Palmer on TikTok. TikTok's been fun, creating all sorts of new content, seeing how people engage with it, and kind of getting a studio and a setup coming up here, and I'm going to be kind of leaning into it a little bit more. It's been fun, and Instagram, a lot of that stuff lives there, a lot of just documenting my life, and finishing up the season here, super fun working with a ton of guys in season once January hits, draft training vets, and then helping out college kids. And I have a tour for anybody who's quarterbacks. I'm doing a 12-stop tour around the country next year, 9 cities from January to July of my camps. So
awesome.
Yeah. And maybe we can have you back sometime around the draft. I'd be interested in that for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Holler at me.
Absolutely.
Sweet.
Well, thanks again,
right.
Jordan. Go play on your iPad. And we'll catch you around.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Well, again, thank you, Jordan Palmer, for coming on to the show. It was a blast having you. That pretty much wraps things up on our end. Make sure, as always, you guys, keep in touch for tons and tons of content coming away on all platforms. We'll be back Monday, of course, to recap Week 9. Maybe Jordan Love pulls out something magical against the Chiefs.
He will.
Even though, their defense is horrible, so there's always that. But yeah, don't miss out on all the great content, as always, from Corn Boy, Gambling Addiction Boy, which, Theo, your gambling addiction came back to bite you.
I literally am pulling up Venmo right now to pay you, Clayton.
Dude was literally about to Venmo me.
I was.
And, of course, Lemon Boy. Make sure you all go call in for the Stay Hot shout-outs for Sunday night, and we'll catch you on the flippity flop.